Next, Jaakko Salminen from Helsinki. Good afternoon, Jaakko.
Good afternoon. Yeah, it's it's 1 p.m. here in Helsinki. Actually, I'm outside of Helsinki because we're working from home as well. I'm a business angel. I've been doing business angel investing for almost 9 years now. Invested in over 20 companies, and actually, I'm doing one of my best partial exits this week. So this is a very good week for me.
Congratulations.
Thank
Continue.
you. It's too rare an occasion, but it's something to celebrate. I've also been a partner at Cronenfeld Finance, a financial advisory company, for almost 5 years now. We finance, well, we actually advise on debt financing growth companies and sometimes startups as well. I used to be CEO and partner in 2 software companies, and we made exits out of both of those in the past. And I've also been the chairman of Finnish Business Angels Network a couple of years back.
Awesome. Great to have you on board. Miguel, please.
Hi, Ram. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm a technologist at heart. I like facts and things. I've been working, started with AI, my career, and then did a switch to financial industry. And the last 4 years, I was actually working on almost exclusively on the blockchain and cryptocurrency topics. Public blockchain, central banks, exchanges, a lot of different things, wealth management industry, etc. I'm currently working now with Blocknox, cryptocurrency custody provider from further Stuttgart. And probably the best feedback that I can give you guys is both from the financial market in Germany, but as well from how to structure the product, what your assumptions with respect to blockchain, with respect to cryptocurrency could be, and how you should align those in order to, to put your growth perspectives in place. So looking forward.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Sven, the floor is yours. Be conscious of time. We have about 45 minutes. Take us away.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for being here and listening to our solutions and what we're trying to do here. So just really briefly of who I am. My name is Sven Martinsson, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Valega Chain Analytics. And what we do is we provide a tool for AML, so anti-money laundering, and counter-financing of terrorism compliance tool. That's really what we do. And this is for blockchain, and it is mainly for exchanges, financial institutions, or really anybody who is willing to experiment with this new financial instrument that we see growing in the world. So I will share my screen here so that you can all see what this is all about. Let's see if I can get this on. Can you all see my screen right now?
Yep.
Yep, beautiful. So yesterday we started working on this business canvas as per the Accelerator Frankfurt's requests, and we have been then identifying what are the problems that we have seen in the industry, the solution that we have come up with, and of course the value proposition that we have. So just to quickly give you a scope of what we have discovered when it comes to blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and the problematization with compliance. So what we see in the industry today is that there's an ever-growing amount of people who are working with cryptocurrencies. These are mainly exchanges, private people who are trading, but we start seeing quite a lot of interest from the financial institutions in the sense of banks, insurance companies, all kind of looking into this. What we notice is that in the industry itself, there has been quite a lot of lack of knowledge of blockchain in general from people who are trying to enter the market. And even though they're working on the technology, the actual understanding of how the regulations match and what kind of regulations are coming up has been lacking. The amount of tools to really stay compliant with regulations that now exist are also not really out there yet. It's of course a new market, so that is why. And recently we had the 5-AMLD regulation coming in, which is the then anti-money laundering directive that came into play now on the 10th of January. And through quite an extensive research, we noticed that there barely was any companies who were prepared for this, kind of how it was with the GDPR when that came into play. But of course, this is to prevent fraud. This is to prevent financing terrorism and other illicit activities happening on the blockchain to allow for a more massive adoption. So what we set out to do was actually to build a tool to really kind of cater to this problem. So when we were looking at our competitors, which are not many at the moment, we saw that a lot of them are very expensive. There is a lack of big database, the possibility to flag addresses. So addresses are basically the account numbers, right? Your account on the blockchain. You couldn't really flag those correctly or like effectively. And in general, quite a lot of cost for smaller teams to be compliant. So we figured we build a tool that is easy to use, has a quick integration through API, allows for white labeling when necessary, and automation as much as possible, so that especially SMEs, when they are getting into working with blockchain and cryptocurrencies, they don't need to hire a team of 15 compliance officers. They can actually have our tool, which does a lot of the work and saves a lot of cost for the company. So a little bit of the value proposition that we have for that is then, of course, that we have this network where everybody can share information about illicit activities that are going on. We have a very vast database. We have at the moment almost 207 million associated addresses with different entities. This then meaning like illicit activities in, for example, the darknet. We have been able to track them to like gambling companies, which is in a way suspicious depending on what's going on there. We're offering incident response for cybercrime. We have noticed a very big increase in cybercrime related to cryptocurrencies now during COVID-19. In the past 3 months, we've seen an increase of 1.5% in this. So we're offering that kind of value as well for companies who are being attacked with ransomwares. We have qualitative data, real-time analysis, so you can actually monitor all the transactions that are happening within cryptocurrencies, right? And that's to filter out the bad seeds and really stay compliant with this 5-AMLD, providing risk assessment and even most recently geolocation. And I'm pretty sure we are the only company that is able to provide that at the moment. And not only that, but we also provide a more personal service, right? We actually talk to the companies that are our clients. We do forensic investigations for them when necessary, and we collaborate with law enforcement as well as we can to make sure that there are less times to really find out what's going on in a case. And we also provide then, on top of that, forensic reports that can be used in court. So that is really kind of where we are and what we do. And our clients are actually the law enforcement, financial institutions, and exchanges. And the early adopters of this are the exchanges, who are they really need to have this kind of tools to stay compliant. And we're targeting mainly the SMEs at the beginning, because we see that there are a lot of companies coming up, a lot of startups within the field. Just in, for example, Estonia, we see that there are 600 companies working with cryptocurrencies today, and not many are actually staying compliant in the way that they should. And the same thing with financial institutions now coming up. We saw that Germany has 40 banks which applied to become Bitcoin brokers, so they can actually start trading Bitcoin. And we see as well that there is a necessity for a tool like ours, because there is a difference between filtering out transactions on the centralized data that we see that has been working in the past few years with a decentralized one, which is where we put in our efforts. So that's basically it. Are there any questions so far?
Guys, any questions? You want to continue?
Yeah, I can go in, and I figured I would show you just a really
Jaco,
quick.
were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was thinking about traction, but I guess you'll come to that a bit later, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can actually just answer that. So, like, the traction that we've had is that we have been invited quite a lot to very prestigious events within the fintech community, the crypto community, because of our knowledge of the industry when it comes to that, especially when talking about the collaboration and communication between law enforcement, fintech companies, and cybercrime happening in there, right? And fraud prevention. So that is kind of where we have really started to gain a lot of traction, and the ball is rolling quite quickly there. We do collaborate with several law enforcements around in the Nordics to make sure that our databases are always updated, that when we see something happening, we can provide law enforcement with this. But of course, it is a compliance tool, so we actually only started commercializing this now in November 2019, because of course, if you're going to put out a tool that is working with compliance and regulation, it has to really work from the get-go. So that's kind of how that is working. And we have one client now. Our first paying client is an actual pretty big actor, and it is from Finland, from Helsinki, and is one of the crypto traders.
And if I also may emphasize a little bit more also that something that we see that is been working also is actually to educate people about what is actually happening, and we have been very good at communicating that on, for example, social media. I think Sven was not so many weeks ago when you were actually in Swedish newspapers when you said that there's a big blind spot in understanding and how to prevent sort of anti-money laundering connected to virtual currencies, and how we should be able to tackle that, which defense systems needs to be in place in all the financial institutions, and not get the misconception that we don't accept Bitcoin, so therefore we don't we're not sort of we're not into that risk group. And I think that it comes down to like building up knowledge within the banking industry, and make them understand that you're not safe just because you don't accept Bitcoins, and you need to have some defense systems because what the bad people want to do, the criminals, is they want to launder the money in the banking platform. So it's really important that you set up different types of structures so that you prevent this from happening. And this is, I think, the latest months, there has been quite a lot of discussions about this, especially in the Nordics. When Sven, before COVID-19, Sven was supposed to be invited to a workshop with the tax authorities in Sweden and all the banks. And maybe Sven, you can tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I mean, that is like upgrading the ecosystem and really educating really everybody who will have a stake in this in the future. But I think the best way is to actually show you a quick demo of what the tool, like how the tool actually works. So let's say that you're actually just a regular trader, or you're a clerk at a bank, and you're just looking through the a KYC process, and you need to know if you have a virtual currency holder as a client, as a potential client. What you can then do very quickly as a quick due diligence check is just to add the address to the system, and you'll immediately get a report of what the risk is on that. These are just our example reports which you use, but then you can actually extract this very quickly, and what you see is actually right now on the blockchain of what is happening with this Bitcoin address. So address, again, that's kind of like the bank account. And this one has not had many things going on here at the moment. And it was quite a long time ago they had this last transaction, but it did go through this one entity, 999dice.com, which is a gambling entity. It has been associated with some money laundering in the past, and this is kind of where the value really is, really see which entities are connected to what. And you can do this for every single address, basically from the first ever created Bitcoin, right? And for example, for exchanges and such, and other companies who will be using our corporates, they can immediately get access to our database and see what's actually going on there. So right now we have 207 million associated addresses. This is actually growing on a weekly basis, where we have really connected these addresses to different entities. right? And entities meaning fraud, fraudulent services, drug, money laundering, purchases of weapons, human trafficking, and most recently we've been working on child abuse cases and really trying to get to the bottom of that as well. And if we look at the grand general of everything, we see that 70% of people who are using Bitcoin, they are actually just regular traders, just daily traders who are really just trying to run business as usual and see what's going on with this new financial instrument that we have found. Almost 25% suspicious, mostly gambling companies and other like Bitcoin tumblers and mining operations, which we cannot be sure depending on what jurisdiction you're in. You know, if you're in Malta, that's legal. If you're in Finland, it's not legal. So we categorize that as that. And then the company who's using the service, it's up to them to really classify it themselves. And again, there's been an increase in that downright illegal activities. So 5.2% at the moment. This has been an increase of 1.5% in the past 3 months. And this is, of course, ransomware, sextortion, all due to COVID-19 mainly. So where do we go here? Just a quick...
Sorry, Sven, a question.
Yes.
Can you elaborate, where do you get the information for those categories?
Yeah, so this has been a very arduous work of 2 years approximately, really running down the rabbit hole. We have gone down on the entire darknet. We have looked at every single forum that we can possibly find. We have also collaborated with law enforcement, getting ongoing cases that we've seen. They have given us addresses that are directly connected to illicit activities. Most recently with the Swedish police, we had addresses coming from this thing called Flugsvamp 2.0, which was a massive drug operation. So now we can offer those addresses as well and say like, hey, these are now connected to illegal activities. So maybe be sure that you're not collaborating with that. So it's been a very, very long work of really getting this database. But now we do have some machine learning technology in the background trying to find the different patterns and really seeking it out. So it's constantly updating with the patterns that we have found.
Okay.
So if I quickly just show you what it would look like from a perspective of an exchange or a bank who are transacting, this is kind of what it would look like in real time. Of course, right now there's a lot of yellows and reds here from our side, but that is because these are, of course, the ones we look into. But most likely it would hopefully be a lot more green from the side of an exchange, for example. But you can get all the information you kind of need here, and we have automated this really well. And not only that, you can export it, of course, when you need to send it to law enforcement, tax authorities. Same thing with getting the actual details. So if we actually go into here, you can immediately see that this actual address here is illegal, and it was the Agora market. So that was the darknet. So this is like a drugs mainly, and we can see the information on that going on. And for actually here we have a Finnish person, so I think we could even see this one. There was a ransomware going on here. Let me see if I can find which one it actually was. I think it was here actually. This money laundering. Oh well, but there was this one illicit activity that was going on from the reported addresses. So you can also report the addresses yourself here on the system. And I think it was from the beginning of the year, and it was a ransomware, and it was actually people getting emails in Finland about this illicit activity that was going on. So that is basically how the system works on the front end towards the companies themselves. And for law enforcement, we have then built a Pathfinder. And I think that this is the most interesting one in terms of cybercrime and forensic investigations, because we can actually really look into the follow the money trail, right? And really see what activities have been going on, how much money has been transacted in general. And you can actually just really click the different paths and really follow the trail to see where has the money been going, right? And the idea is that we will be able to have this in the sense, or we can actually use this to trace down where an exchange is, where a bank is, or where an entity that has done their know your customer process, and hopefully then help law enforcement with enough information so that they can get a warrant and really find out who is connected to that specific transaction address, and really help them on the path to finding a criminal who's been working on this. So that is basically how the system works, and it's developing a lot more as we go. This Pathfinder is our newest product, and it's under development, and we will really have these cool things happening, so to speak, in the coming weeks, actually. So yeah, that is basically the tool and how it works, and yeah, thank you for listening about it.
Very interesting, of course, but if you can elaborate, what's your model? Are you allowing integration, for example, in exchanges or other services like with APIs, or is it going through your standalone application always?
No, so no, it's all connected to APIs, and we have the different APIs for different segments depending on what it is you're actually looking for. An exchange will probably want to do the real-time monitoring and also find the entity clusters, right? So then they connected those two parts of the API into that, and we give access, and then they can filter that out very quickly. And we can also white label the solution as well, so it really can integrate into their own CRM or system that they're using. So that's how that works. And for law enforcement, they would use the Pathfinder. We can also white label that, but a lot of it is also work that we do. So we do the investigations together with whatever agency is looking for information.
And it is, I guess, subscription model?
Yeah, so for the exchanges and institutions like that, we do have a software as a service kind of model on that. For law enforcement, since it's not all the time that they're tracing, we have a lease or a cost per hour if we have to do a lot of the work ourselves as well, and that's how we're looking at that.
Thank you.
Dwelling into that, could you tell us, so first a comment, I would encourage you to add CipherTrace to the alternatives. So it's a provider with very good data quality. And then related to the last question, so as a first question, how does it work with the data ownership? So let's say I need to have my own risk metrics because it's a regulatory base, or depends directly on the kind of clients that I'm serving. And I want to have access to your labeling, but I need to do two things. I need to store information about transactions privately on my own premises, and I also need to compute my own risk measures. So how would I go about that in that kind of setup? So do you support that? Is it only as software platform as a service, or software as a service? What kind of model do you propose there?
So when we're looking at people who want to obtain the data themselves, I mean, this data is out there regardless. The blockchain is open, it is there. You can really find all this information that we have if you do your own work on this, right? Of course, you will have to have a lot of tabs open, and you really will have to dig into it. We have just compiled everything into one single place. So when you do API calls, you can of course save the work you've done. You can save the addresses and save the risk scores as well. But of course, we are only providing the data. We're not linking them specifically to a personal identity. Of course, due to the GDPR restrictions, and of course, blockchain is kind of a pain point when it comes to that. But so of course, the exchanges, they will hopefully have done their KYC. So they have the identity of the person. So they are following those regulations, hopefully. What we're doing then is we're just providing the data on that transaction and the risk score that we have found. It's up to them to decide how they want to store or like report this data on their own.
Yeah, and they can still, and they can also customize to answer one of your questions.
Yeah, exactly. They can flag their own exactly. They can flag their own addresses. So, for example, if you're in Malta and you're having a gambling company, and that's that's legal there, then you can flag it on your own database as legit, as green, right? You can say there's no risk with this, so keep these going through. But of course, in Finland, then that is, well, that should be flagged as a red transaction. It should be like that. So you can do that on the platform, and that will be specific to your company.
Okay.
So there is no possibility of somebody abusing your system,
not in that sense,
their competition, or making themselves green even though they're red.
No, because you can do that on your own platform. You can do it on your own company, but we will not launch that globally, right? And if somebody would say that, hey, this is actually illegal everywhere, we will conduct our own research and forensic to see, is this really correct? And only after that vetting process, we will put it on a global scale.
And right now, just allow me, like, the act of flagging an address only allows to flag it with a certain risk. So you will never be able to flag an address as green in a way. That's only for us internally. So flagging an address is only going to set it as yellow, like we say, like suspicious, or red, like something is wrong with the address. So it's not that you cannot like flag everything as green and trick the system in a way.
Yeah, because that could create problems in different jurisdictions,
All right.
It's just a wondering. I'm wondering how to. So in order to keep your data safe, and in order to make sure that it's also compatible with a lot of jurisdictions, it seems to me that you have a very difficult balance to do between adding a lot of detail and at the same time making the detail not very specific. How do you, or jurisdiction specific or use case specific? How do you go about this? Can you tell us a bit about what your process is? How do you go about marking these addresses or clusters? What kind of sources do you have?
So at the moment, we follow the regulation. A lot of our competitors, they will build a tool, they will have that, and you're doing your own assessment, right? So it's not really automated in that sense. And then when the regulation comes, hopefully it works with that. We have done it the other way. We have taken it from the regulator side and building the tool. So we're looking at mainly now the European regulation and the US regulation, and see what does that look like, and we work out of that. So the main ones are looking at the Financial Action Task Force recommendations, following those to as much as we can, as well as, of course, the 5MLD. That is the most important one, I would say, when it comes to specifically this tool. And we're also working on the upcoming now travel rule, as they call it, where you actually have to link a certain information to a transaction, right? And this has been a big pain point for the entire blockchain industry, for every single exchange. But we think we actually have a solution for that, and we actually have brought in an expert who is right now working with us on this, and we have even come so far that we actually have geolocation on certain transactions. So that's already working on the road there. But of course, it is still up to the customer themselves to really assess, is this legal in my jurisdiction, yes or no, right? So that is how we go about it, because we cannot, of course, be responsible for a company if they say like, hey, for us, we felt that this was legal, but it's really not. Then we'll say, hey, we provided you with the data. That's what it looks like in the EU. If you decided to let this transaction happen without reporting it, which is your obligation, then that's on you. You had all the data you needed.
Can you tell us a bit more how that geolocation works? What the data source is for that? Is it the mempool? Are you tracking the mempool? And if so, what currencies are you focusing on?
So for the geolocation, it is Bitcoin. I mean, of course, that is the biggest one at the moment, and of course, also it is still in an early stage, so we have to kind of test it as it goes. Especially with this travel rule, there's so much uncertainty there, and how that's going to go down. But what we're okay, that's a little bit of possibly a bit of a company secret there, but yeah, mempools are definitely involved, and potentially also how some of the nodes work are also involved in that.
Okay.
Sven, how is your team distributed? Are you working? You guys are working remotely? Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah. So of course, even before COVID, we were a team that was a little bit remotely. Yes, we have the core team in Finland, but now we have actually sent our CTO Jorge. He's in Portugal, which we know is a good country for blockchain. So we wanted to have a foot there already, especially with really good developers coming from that side of the continent. We have our forensic investigator who is in Israel, actually at the moment as well. And he travels between Israel, Finland, and Sweden, kind of working on these cases. And we actually have a lot of support from our advisors, our board advisors, who are also in Sweden. And these guys are real heavy people in the blockchain sphere. Not only for the compliance side, but also understanding the logic of blockchain and how potential algorithms could go to optimize tools like ours. So those are from Sweden, and the rest of the team is here in Helsinki, in sunshine Helsinki.
Maybe you can identify your own, or if you thought about your own challenges for scaling. Is it technology? Is it distribution? Is it network? What would you see your biggest challenge right now?
Yeah, so the knowledge that we have about the industry, I think is fine. We have that under wraps, but it really is trying to it's this educate the industry part. I think that has been a challenge, because we did get the Tempo funding and the R&D funding, which are coming directly from the Innovation Fund of Finland, and we were the first company to actually get that kind of grant for working directly with cryptocurrencies, if not in Europe, at least in the Nordics. So of course that was a big step, but the time it took to educate these government officials on how important it is to have these tools, how the regulations are coming, and the fact that blockchain technology is not going anywhere, cryptocurrency is not going anywhere, and we have to be prepared for that when a mass adoption does happen. The tools are all there already. And it actually started happening a lot faster than what we even thought ourselves. Especially now with this global crisis happening, we're seeing this as well. And it's really trying to reach out to these different segments and trying to get those customers on board as quick as possible. That has been a bit of a challenge, if we're going to be completely honest. And of course, a part of it is how we do our marketing. It is on how we leverage our network as well.
Who are actually the target clients that you guys are seeking? I'm not sure you went over that.
Yeah, so here in the Nordics, we have been targeting the exchanges, Nordics and Balticum, sorry. We've been targeting exchanges, and of course also law enforcement are always part of this. But when we're looking, for example, Germany, it is the financial institutions, it is the banks, like the fact that 40 banks were willing to say out in the open that, hey, we are looking for a license to trade Bitcoin. That is a pretty big step, and that is really kind of industry changing for everybody, especially when we see things like Swift, who have been working a lot with blockchain in the past. It is a very big change. So that's why Accelerator Frankfurt for us is a very important program to be in, especially because these banks in Germany, and that's a lot of where we want to get.
Miguel. Miguel, he's been for years here in Frankfurt running some large-scale projects with the major banks, anything from ECB to the big major banks here. He's working currently on also such scales. Maybe can you give Miguel a little bit to Sven and the team more insights? Who should they talk to in the financial institutions? And when you are working with the financial institution, what do you seek from such a solution? And are they seeking now solutions like that?
So it's definitely on top of the agenda. There are very good competitors to what you guys are offering. I think you have a kind of a good fit. I see some, as you've described with the IP that you have. I see that there's your basis solution, and that something on top has to be built. So the way that you're structuring it, whether you will do this thing on top for each financial institution that is interested, or whether you will team up with something like a broker or a broker software provider, that remains to be seen. I think, however, from the sales perspective, that you would should definitely seek out some partnerships to people that are offering connections to multiple exchanges, for example, or working directly with crypto fiend banks, because they were probably trying to layer their solutions and trying to offer some of the services to the other ones that just want the customer to have this, but don't want necessarily any exposure on the technology. So that, from the top of my head, that's really what strikes me. So it's with the financial institutions. I mean, it will take you a bit of time to get in. Try to dig into the ecosystem as much as you can, and try to partner with as many companies as you possibly can, service providers, because they will then let you in, and they will, everybody's trying to bundle their products so that the cost of adoption is as reduced as possible.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm actually a little bit concerned about the customer segments as well. They are good customers, but for one, the segments are quite different. The exchanges are one kind of customer, the law enforcement is another kind, the banks are a third kind, and they were more listed as well. And the other thing is that they are typically quite slow customers to adopt anything new. What do you think is the best customer segment, the most potential customer segment you're looking at now?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, exchanges is one of them, because that is the regulation is already in practice, right? They have to stay compliant with these, and we do understand that some of them have kind of looked the other way and saying, oh well, it's kind of how GDPR went when it was implemented. Not everybody was ready for that until they started seeing companies fall, and I think that is kind of where the exchanges are at the moment. But once they do have this kind of incentive to really push forward to, I think that it will keep on going. And we do have a pretty big one already on board. And we're now looking at the politics to really get them on that as well. And I think those are the early adopters, and potentially even private traders who want to legitimize their transactions, right? Because there are, of course, for example, in Finland, they have to do their taxes, and we have seen that almost 54% of the people weren't doing their taxes on crypto because it was complicated. But now they also have to show where these transactions are coming from. If they have, even by accident, done financing of illicit activities, that could come and harm them, right? And these are on transactions that are over €1,000 or whatever. So like, this has to happen as well. So maybe even they could be an early customer segment, and they could probably adopt it quite quickly if the pricing is correct and how we actually market it out there for them. which we haven't yet done, in all honesty. But yeah, exchanges, and of course law enforcement, they are interested as well, because we can still have a communication with them, a really open communication, and the more proof of concept that we can provide, I think that the quicker they can come on board when it's needed.
It sounds to me that the exchanges might actually be a good customer group, and law enforcement actually might be kind of a partner.
Yeah.
More than a customer group. For one, there aren't that many law enforcement, organizations per country.
Yeah, of course.
And the other thing is that they probably have valuable information for you, so they might be even a better partner. Coming back to the exchanges, can you somehow quantify the potential market you see with exchanges? How many exchanges are there, and how much business could you be doing
absolutely
with them?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, in Finland, for one, there are 2 major ones, and then there are a few other smaller ones who are working with cryptocurrencies in some way or another. But then when we go over to, for example, the Baltics, just in Estonia, there were just recently over 900 companies working with this, right? And 600 of them doing exchanges one way or another. So, and they all have to stay compliant. I mean, I'm guessing they do transactions over $1,000, right? So they have to stay compliant. So that is already, just in one country, quite a big potential market. Germany is growing a lot. And then we have countries in Switzerland, Malta, and Latin America. You know, it's a really big market, and it's definitely growing. And a lot of them are startups who don't really afford the expensive solutions that are out there right now. So this is where we see a big potential for us to really get in there. We just have to get in there in the right way, and not just with fear, but also with like, hey, we're here to really help you out.
Okay, so what do you think? What do you think is a typical LTV per customer in that space?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, we usually tend to set out to have contracts that are at the very least a year long. And if we're looking at something, because we have to also see how much money the company has, how many trades are they actually doing. That's why we have the different pricing for whatever different models. But we expect that within 5 years, at least in a monthly basis, if we get approximately €1,000 a month from a customer who's actually actively using our services, and we manage to secure them for 2 years or 3 years on the exchanges, that's already quite a sizable amount of money. And then if we get into law enforcement, where we're actually collaborating with them on a basis of case to case, that is already also like a pretty good value. Then it depends on how long we can keep them. But yeah, for the lifetime value, it really is something that we're still really kind of looking into, since we are such a young company looking at how to really market ourselves in the correct way. But I think our pricing is at least quite affordable. We've gotten that feedback from several exchanges already. And
can you elaborate on the pricing, Sven, please?
Yeah, sure. Like,
how is it?
For example, we had have an exchange that we're negotiating with right now, and when they're a startup, they're just starting up, and just for them, for one of the products, we're selling it for €400 a month, and then they already get the monitoring solution, and of course also working on a free version for the next few months on the entity clusters. And then after those months are gone, then it's another €400 for that. So €800 in total for that specific client we're talking to now. And we have no implementation fees at the moment because we're still starting up. We want to show that, hey, we can work with you and just implement our service. And on another scale, a bigger exchange, for example, that can range from anything to 15 to 20,000 euros a year, just on that one specific product as well. So we're already still below what the market, what the most expensive service is, which is at the moment, I'm guessing, chain analysis and elliptic. So we're kind of positioning us somewhere there in the middle, between the absolute cheapest with the most expensive, but we still offer a bit more than what the cheapest do. and we're pretty much online with what the big players are kind of offering.
Very good. Yeah, the big players, license fees, 6 figures actually, US
yeah.
dollars, as far as I know here in Frankfurt. Jaco, you touched on some very good points on the customer segments. It's something that has come up in the previous mentoring session as well. We need to look into these, and obviously, when you're selling to an exchange or you're selling to a financial institution, a bank, perhaps the communication is different. I wanted to ask a question on for banks, especially banks here in Germany. They require on-premise solutions. How can you do that? Can you do that, and how scalable is it?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, we did talk about the white label solutions, and for institutions that are big of that scale, like banks and insurance companies, right? Yeah, the idea is that we're not just going to lease our product, and that's in the way that, you know, you're connecting to the API in that way. We're actually going to white label it and integrate that so that it's on their system, and that we will educate their staff on how to use it to the most optimal level. We will have ongoing kind of updates on how the system is working, what features are coming in, to really keep them educated on this. And the only thing that they're actually kind of calling on is the API for the actual database, because that is, of course, we have to keep updating that as it goes, so that they always have the most up to date. But other than that, it's going to be completely white label for them. They're going to use it in their own CRM systems or their own monitoring systems, and it's going to feel like it's just an addition to what they're already using. And, you know, we will just be a service provider in that way, or technology provider.
Good. We have 2 to 3 minutes. Is there any more pressing questions? Obviously, I would be grateful to the mentors if after the session you can drop me an email with your initial comments. We will compile all these and debrief all these from all the sessions, all the mentors, and debrief obviously with the startups. But we still have a couple of minutes. Any further?
Well, putting on my investor glasses, it seems that the most interesting part of your solution is potentially the database. And I'm wondering if that is something that could be replicated by somebody else, or is there some sort of proprietary data that's available only from you?
Yeah, so yeah, actually the database is the most valuable part. You are very much correct about that. And I would say no, because a lot of the work we have done is in-house. We have been doing a lot of forensic research ourselves. And just to kind of show you how qualitative our data is that when we received these addresses, we received about 40,000 addresses from the police in Sweden. And when we received these addresses to add to our database, we already had those. Our machine learning had already kind of seen the patterns, that there was something mystical about these on the dark net. Yes, we couldn't trace them to which specific criminal organization it was, but we can tell that it was criminal activities. So we had already flagged them as wrong. So we were actually only lacking 10,000 of those 40,000 addresses. So that was already a pretty good indication of that our database and our team who has been working on the machine learning, on the AI, they have really been doing a good job of this. And that is something that we keep in-house at all times. All our servers are on a undisclosed safe location under surveillance at all times as well for those purposes. So I think that is definitely something that we have that is our own.
Okay, I think great. Looking forward to get the feedback from the mentors. Jorge in Portugal, just to let you know that Miguel is Portuguese as well. So you guys have some blockchain and language in common.
It was easy to see by the name.
Yeah, sure.
Very good. Miguel, is Portugal really such a strong blockchain country?
I don't know.
Yeah, you've been too long in Frankfurt. Guys, thank you very much. We're going to go now to commercial break. Mentors, please stay on this line. There's going to be about 5 to 6 minute break. Go get your coffees, stretch a bit, and we'll be back pretty soon. Thank you, Valega.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
so
Thank you
much.
to all the mentors
Thank
as
you.
well. Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sven Martinsen. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the blockchain analytics firm Valega Analytics. I'm a Swedish Brazilian and living in Helsinki, Finland at the moment. And fun fact about me is, I guess, that I'm a huge gamer nerd, like proper one. So why did I become an entrepreneur? Well, that kind of just happened. Then I did not expect that to be a thing in my life, but here we are. And we founded the company because we've been following blockchain and cryptocurrencies for many, many years and seen huge potential in this new world economy and technology. However, there's of course been a lot of issues with it in terms of trust and illicit activities going on. So we set out to build a tool and a service that actually analyzes the blockchain and provides risk scores and the such for that, and all in case of compliance and mass adoption. So what do we expect from the accelerator program is really to get out there, build a strong brand, enter the German market, which is actually booming when it comes to blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And I guess that's about it. So, stay safe and see you around.